Hello, everyone. My name is Dave. Let's start chatting about foundations of tech. And for those of you watching this in a future date, we're in March of 2025. So to give you a little timestamp of when we're talking about it, because some of the things that I'm talking about, like AI, will shift and move as we go forward. Start out a little bit about me. I'm the founder and CEO of Milestone C. We're an ed tech company. I am a STEM educator as well. I've taught in the classroom. I've taught teachers. I've taught in lots of different settings, summer camps, after school. So lots of experiences there. Before that, I was an engineer. My last corporate job was I was a system engineer. And if you go on the personal side, I'm always mountain biking, snowboarding, skiing, running, hiking. Those are my kids and my wife. We're in Vermont doing some skiing and snowboarding. So just a little bit about me on the personal side. What we do at Milestone C is we provide STEM programs, the curriculum, the PD, the coaching and support. So that's what a full package of a program looks like, and we help schools stack that into pathways. We also do consulting on what to teach, when to teach it, how to keep pace, some best practices there. We do professional development unrelated to our curriculum. So things like AI, if you have robots, you have drones, you're not sure what to do with them, we're willing to help just in a PD perspective. And then we do coaching and support as well. So this can look like working with teachers to develop their own curriculum, to understand certain topics, go deeper on coding, get a better fundamental understanding in a coaching and support type of way. The big picture of what we're working towards is actually connecting schools and industry in a closer way. What we want to see happen is that industry and schools at a local level know each other and work with each other. And what that builds is that pipeline of students learning the correct things to then become successful in life, and them being successful is the future workers of industry. So we want to engage, inspire, and connect schools and industry. Here's the topics we're going to run through today. Enough about Milestone C and about me. Let's get into the topics. So we're going to talk about the ocean of tech, what's happening out there in technology. We'll talk about the big picture of what's really, just take a kind of a snapshot of it. We'll then hit on three subjects: engineering design, robotics, and AI. These are three that are fundamentally shifting our world. And there are others out there and more coming, and we'll briefly touch on those. But these are the three that I like to focus on. And then we'll talk about where are the jobs. So I just took a look at the Department of Labor information and just kind of poked around it. What jobs are moving out, what jobs are coming in, what industries are moving around. So trying to give you a snapshot of that, because when you look at your students today, let's say they're in ninth grade, in 4 years, they're out there trying to either get a job or go to college, which then they're out there in 8 years. And that's not that far away for them to be looking at this world, and it moves pretty quickly. And then we'll look at how to navigate this in education and what we do, what we encourage and do in the classroom. For you, those of you that like to hear what your learning objectives are. So a snapshot of industry is obviously what we're talking about, a quick exploration of engineering design, robotics, and AI. And each of those topics I could talk about for an hour plus, but we'll do a quick couple slides on each one. The job outlook, I'll slow down and walk through because that's some interesting observations that I've had in there. And then we'll talk about how to navigate this and how to go forward with it. So if we categorize, we really have two things happening out there in industry. We have existing technology being applied in new areas. The easiest example there is drones. Drones are no longer new, but the big growth is they're going into every industry, construction to geography surveys, to war fighting. Their drones are becoming every industry's tool to do what they need to do. And the more anything you can think of, from mapping things to surveying land to checking out pipelines, all these different industries that are old school technology industries, right? They don't use the cutting edge tech, are now adopting this technology since it's been around for about 10 to 15 years. And then we have new technology continually being introduced. The big new one is AI and all the new things that AI can do. And as industry comes up with these new groundbreaking technologies, they start to be introduced and brought to us. Here's a visual of that. So when we talk about the ocean of tech, what's really happening there? There's a lot going on. So on the top left there, you have additive manufacturing. That's showing a picture of metal sintering. So it's laser zapping atomized metal to make metal structures. You have our cute robot there, and really what that's representing is robotics and automation. Both becoming sort of that futuristic humanoid robot is becoming a bit more real, and not quite at the consumer level yet, but it's starting to get there. We of course have AI, the neural networks, and everything that AI is influencing in our lives. And then on the bottom left there, you have digital twin, which is 3D modeling and engineering design just ramped up, right? And this is what the future is, the digital twin. And then on the right there, you have automation. That's when you think about something like medicine, how do we make it? It's all through automation and robotics these days. So, and that's more in the factory setting versus something like the consumer setting, like our cute robot. So when we look at this, this is what industry is doing. And the job reports we'll look at later reflect a lot of this. So let's touch on engineering design. Engineering design, most of us now know what 2D modeling is, 3D modeling is, and we do a lot of that in schools. So something like Tinkercad is down at elementary school into middle school. And then you start with your grown-up programs like Onshape, CATIA, SolidWorks, AutoCAD. And that could be architectural software, engineering software, or some of your rendering like HGTV style software. And the newest one is model-based definition and digital twin. So model-based definition means that you are defining everything by the model. The tolerances, the specifications are all built into the model. So there's no more 2D print. You are not taking a 3D object in space, like this car or this engine, and squishing it down to 2D to build each part. The supply base is building to the model. It is defined by the model. So that's revolutionary. When you go back 20, 30 years, everything was in 2D. We would build the 2D, we'd measure in 2D, but then you're building a 3D part, and that can lead to errors. You're also not wasting time here, where the engineering model is what the assemblers are actually using with some added information that the manufacturing engineers put in. And then digital twin is the next step there. And things like your aerospace industries, your car industries are getting to this with their new products. And digital twin essentially looks at the whole life cycle. Something like wear and tear, they now have smart sensors built into their product, and it's feeding you data back to whatever home base. And then instead of saying, hey, after 100 hours of plane needs to do this, they now have real data. They can actually measure and say, oh no, it's actually after 89 hours, we need to do that. Or after 200 hours, we need to do that. So it's becoming a smarter product, and that smarter product leads to that full life cycle viewpoint, and actually leads to better products out in the field. We know when to replace what, better maintenance cycles, and then better sundown cycles when things become outdated. Why is this a big game changer? It's really the try before you buy is the really interesting thing there, and that full life cycle viewpoint. Let me show you guys a video. I got to jump Chrome tabs. All right, so here we are in our video.
Across RMS, we're introducing
and I'll turn the sound back on in just 1 second. What we're going to see here is this is RMS, and this is being shown at Sikorsky Aircraft. I formerly worked there, and I was living through some of this. We were digitizing and 3D modeling everything on the old lines, and on the new lines, the 53K was brand new at that point. It's an
digital environment.
Digital environment.
Our designs start up front in 3D, and we maintain that digital thread all the way through the manufacturing and assembly processes.
The ME comes in at the planning stages and creates 3D graphical.
All right, so I'll pause there. So this is the actual aircraft on final assembly, and these are the assemblers. And they're standing around looking at the 3D model of what it should be, and they're figuring out what they need to do to install the part that they're installing. So again, this is what your final assembly on a helicopter looks like these days. It's no longer paper and drilled parts, and everything is done a lot by robotics, so on the back end, and then in the final assembly, it's all brand new 3D modeling assembly sheets.
Op sheets. And now with those 3D graphical op sheets, before I even go and give this to manufacturing to start to build, we go into a virtual VR environment with a mechanic and an ME, and we actually go through the installation before we even allow it to go onto the floor. So now when the mechanic gets this on the shop floor, in the build portion, he uses a mobile device, pulls up his graphical op sheets, he can manipulate it and do whatever he needs to do right on the aircraft, point of use. It's game changing.
All right, so we heard from the folks on the floor, it's game changing, right? And the interesting part there is when they showed that VR lab, you don't just do that with your builders and your engineers, you do that with your customer as well. So the customer gets to see what they're going to get. The pilots get to understand what they're going to be sitting in before you even cut a piece of metal or start, and it's really valuable to do that because once you build an aircraft, it's really hard to change it. So that's a look at what engineering design is becoming. Now, are we there with low cost products? Absolutely not, right? They're still kind of done in the old school ways. But as we build up over the next 10 years, this will become more and more common in everything we buy. So the big impact here is if you are an assembler or technician, back in the day, you say the wrench turners, right? You are not a wrench turner anymore. You might still be turning a wrench. You might still be, doing some manual labor, and that's never going away until we get robotics that is much more advanced because it's the stuff we're able to do, robots just can't do yet. But those assemblers and technicians need some real understanding of 3D modeling, and they don't need to be able to click the buttons necessarily, but they have to be able to manipulate it and understand it and see things in that 3D space. So getting familiarity with that in school is hugely important for them. The big significance here is rapid design iterations. You can make really good products coming out of the gate. You don't have to go test it in the field as much. You don't have to wait to find your mistakes. VR and AR labs are used a lot. Those mistakes going from 3D down to 2D and back to 3D are eliminated. And then when everything is digitized, everything is virtual, this allows robotics and automation to be brought in a much easier way, right? You're not translating from a old school print and you're writing things down and figuring out how to do it. And you're actually all in 3D space, and that allows computers to interpret it much better. All right, jumping to robotics. So robotics, why we're advancing robots. So, the Jetsons cartoon back in the day, that had robots doing some really cool things. And we've actually pulled some of that stuff off, but for the most part, we haven't pulled it off. You see movies like I, Robot with that humanoid walking around and sort of being person-like. We haven't pulled that off yet. But now we're getting much, much closer. And the reason for that is the success of narrow AI. So you're getting AI, we'll talk about this in a minute, that's not so narrow anymore. And then processing power, in our phones in our pockets are astoundingly good at processing. So the chips and the battery power needed are all available, and then the cost. So we have electronics that are extremely cost effective these days. When you think about a computer back in the day costing thousands and thousands of dollars, and now you can get a computer for a couple $100, or you get something like a Raspberry Pi or Arduino for less than $100, right? It's really, really interesting to see. So what's really happening there? Everything, our cars, our appliances, our lights, our devices are all becoming robots. My washer and dryer have Wi-Fi on them. Still don't know why, and never hooked it up, but it has it, right? So it's becoming smarter. We all have security systems that are super smart. Our cars have all these sensors on them if your car's built in the last 5 years. So it's really becoming robots everywhere. We're automating and making smarter robots. So even those cars are, depending on your car, you might have self-park, self-driving modes. You might have some lane follow features or smart cruise control. So all of our current robots are becoming even smarter and automating. And then there's a societal shift in how we operate. I was thinking about the other day, if I bought a new car today and my older daughter is turning 9, would she drive that, or by the time she's 16, so not that far away, in 7-8 years, would she be driving a fully automated car, right? Would she even be driving it? So that's an interesting shift, and that's not that far away, right? We almost have self-driving cars. And so do we teach our younger generation to drive? I think it's still a good idea. They drive it, they know how, but day to day, I don't know that they'll be driving anything. So our lives are shifting as these robots get better and better. The easy one there is, imagine if I took away your phone, can you get to all the places that you need to? And it's, for a lot of people, yes, in their hometown or the city they live in. But if you try to say, hey, you got to go to another state and find this address, we're not used to that anymore, right? If you're, especially if you're below like 35, you never had been asked to do that without something like MapQuest or a TomTom back in the day, or your phone today. Now, what this is it's not an overnight job killer. We'll see again in the jobs data that it's happening, but it's not overnight, right? These things take time. And then it's also not Terminator iRobot scenario, because that's this kind of the scary one everyone thinks of. We're pretty integrated with our devices. So so in my opinion, it's not going to run away from us because we're integrated with it, and it'll really empower us to do more. Let's take a look at, this is just coming out, I think last week, from Google. And not that they haven't been doing this before, but they released this video, and pretty interesting ideas here.
We're bringing Gemini 2.0's intelligence to general-purpose robotic agents in the physical world. To be helpful, robots need to be interactive, responding live to your actions and your voice. They need to be dexterous to complete your most complex tasks. And they need to be general to understand things in your 3D world. And all of these capabilities need to work across different physical forms. We're bringing this together in Gemini Robotics, our most advanced vision language action model. Gemini Robotics is interactive.
Can you put the bananas in the clear container?
Notice how we move the objects and the model reacts and replans on the fly.
Can you put the grapes in the clear container?
Our model's low latency means it can respond live to rapidly changing conditions and instructions. This same model can generalize to all kinds of applications where you can collaborate with the robot live. Gemini Robotics is dexterous. High dexterity tasks are some of the biggest challenges in robotics.
I can fold the orange square into an origami fox.
That sounds fun. Why don't we try that?
Sure. Did you know that the word origami comes from the Japanese words ori, meaning to fold, and kami, meaning paper?
These capabilities are enabled by Gemini 2.0's spatial understanding of detailed aspects of things in your world.
I can point to where the eye should be drawn on the fox.
Most importantly, Gemini Robotics is general. It uses Gemini 2.0's world understanding to generalize across a vast range of real-world tasks.
Can you flip the red die so that it matches the number on the green die?
Many robots can execute predefined actions, but these movements are not predefined. The robot is reasoning both about what it sees and how to move. It figures out how to make the red die match just like we asked. And this generalization goes even further. This same model can generalize to tasks like this one that it's never been trained to do.
Pick up the basketball and slam dunk it.
Keep in mind, these are objects the robot has never seen before. But by leveraging Gemini 2.0's understanding of concepts like basketball and slam dunks, the robot figures out the task. We're now inviting more partners to join our Trusted Testers program, where we're working together to build the next generation of robotic AI agents. Learn more about how we're bringing the world.
All right, I want to pause right on here because this is something that has struggled, right? If you remember way back when Tesla was first starting, they talked about peopleless factories, and they wanted to get there. They wanted to be all automated, and this was the dream of figuring out how to build a future car with future factories. And what stopped them was robot vision. The robots can't see the way we can. When a robot looks at something like this, it gets very confused. Yet a toddler can tell you there's the spatula, there's the spoon, because our eyes and brain are very good at this, right? We've been evolved over millions of years to do something like this well. how to teach a robot to do this is really tough, because if you teach it just what a spatula is, well, now that spatula is overlapping. It can't quite figure it out. But with AI models these days, we're getting there where it can start to figure this kind of thing out. So it's a tough task. And then also when you think about something like tic-tac-toe, which they were showing the robot try to understand that, our current models are great at coming up with complex language and doing complex things, and a toddler can beat it at tic-tac-toe, which is amazing. So again, when you think about things that you had to teach your children, the robot still struggles with some of those. Tying shoes is very a delicate thing. Picking up a fruit from a tree is a very delicate, but you got to be firm thing. These are things children can do that the robots still struggle with, but give it time, let it mature in the way that the same way we teach a child, and the child figures it out and then matures their skills. That's what we're going through with robotics right now. The only way that's possible is through our AI models. All right, so let's jump ahead. So there is no industry or job untouched. This can't be said enough, that it's wild that what robots are actually getting into, or at least in the next 10 years will be. I love to play the game of like, how many robots did I interact with each day? So if I look at today, my car is most certainly a robot by any definition, right? It has sensors and things like that. You look at some of the motion lights I walked past this morning, walking my dog. Those are very basic robots, but they're sensing my movement and then turning a light on. You have all the robots in my house. So anything from if you consider a computer or Wi-Fi adapter, or my phone a robot, which the phone definitely is with Siri on it. Then you have all these robot interactions, right? Is the elevator a robot? Maybe, depending on the definition, but I use one of those. So it's amazing how many you interact with when you actually look at, like, by defining a robot, not as like a humanoid and not as like a, some futuristic thing, but as a simple robot. You interact with them all day. Jobs will change. So instead of manually lifting things, we'll have automation, which in a lot of ways is good for people. But we need to be ready for that. So instead of manually lifting something, you'll have a robot do it, but then somebody will need to maintain that robot, design that robot, code that robot. So the jobs will change. And there's a cost benefit going on for every job. When we look at things like your self-checkout, that is the most obvious example. Grocery store right now has self-checkout and automated checkout, where when I went to CVS yesterday, there was no person at the front. I mean, they were in the store, but it was just two self-checkout things. So now at a grocery store, that makes a bit more sense, right? Weighing out fruit and vegetables can be a little bit hard when you're on a small self-checkout. But at a CVS, you're just grabbing a couple of things. The self-checkout works much better. So every job, it's a cost-benefit analysis. What's the customer experience? How much does a robot cost? What does it cost to have a person? And that math is continually being done. This does bring up some societal changes, as I mentioned with earlier. So this article from the New York Post, they had a robot bar. So the bartender was a robot. And the question there is, do you tip a robot? Right? So, as things change, we kind of have to rethink some of these things, right? You always tip your bartender, they give you a drink, you tip them. These days, everybody likes to tip everybody. But what if it's a robot? Do you tip the robot? That's a, kind of a confusing thing in my mind. All right, let's jump into AI. The new hot, shiny, hot topic, shiny object. So artificial intelligence. So everything has AI in it. It's become a marketing term. So AI driven, AI produced, AI generated. Some of that is true. AI is influencing a lot of products. A lot of that is marketing hype, right? It's something that happens. A lot of folks don't realize we've been trying to do AI for a while. We're in the third hype wave of AI. So back in the 60s, we tried this. We just didn't have the computing power. Our chips just weren't there. In the 80s, we tried this with, we had the chips, but then we tried to hand jam everything with grad students. So hard code it. And you just can't hard code something like that. What happened in this third wave, why it's working now, is we have narrow AI and machine learning. So you have narrow AI succeeding due to the machines teaching themselves. And that's a whole topic to get into, but essentially that's what the success is today. Now, I used to ask this question a lot over the years, before about 3-4 years ago, before large language models came onto the scene. Some people would say we were on the red. AI bubble's going to burst. It's not going anywhere. Maybe it'll stick around a little bit. And then I always thought we were on the orange line. Like, yeah, it'll stick around. Something like Facebook algorithms or YouTube algorithms, they're working. They do well. But I don't know where it's going to go from there, right? Marketing algorithms work well. But again, where does it go from there? So for a while, I thought we were on that orange line. Then large language models come out. And now I'd say 85, 90% of people think we're on that blue line, that it's getting scary, effective, and pervasive. When you see what large language models can do, like ChatGPT and the like, it's pretty impressive. So if we try to define AI, and there's a lot of images out there, this one I think does a pretty good job. So you have narrow AI inside that big blue, and then you have machine learning and deep learning, which is where that success of the current AI models are, large language models and similar. So that's where that success is. And that's our photo recognition engines. All of those are doing machine learning, and some of them are doing deep learning. Now, combined with that, we have natural language processing, which isn't solely AI, but AI comes into play, computer vision, aka computer seeing, image processing, video processing, which isn't on here. But the idea here is when you combine the AI brains, for lack of a better word, with natural language processing and a computer vision, you get what ChatGPT is. So it can kind of interpret the world. You take a picture or video, it kind of knows what it is. You tell it to write a paper, it can write a paper. Not perfectly, they're not great yet, but they're pretty good. They're pretty impressive in certain ways. So this is a good snapshot of AI. And there's whole other fields that I'm not showing here, but these I think are the most in our face today. So what does it do? It doesn't actually know anything. It's pattern prediction in the next right word and the next right pixel. That's really what it's up to. So it's impressively fast picking the next right word, but that's really all it knows is, oh, the next right word is the, or a, or apple. It just kind of picks the next right word based on what it knows or what it's been taught and trained. It summarizes and aggregates data really well. This is one of the impressive things. If I tell me, I throw a news article link into it that's, super long, I don't want to read it. I say, give me the summary. It's pretty good at that. It's also good at data. So if you have these big data sets, and we'll see this in the job report, that's one of the biggest growing fields. The AI can crunch through it so much better than a human and really help find the patterns and find out information. It writes code. So this is where our software engineers are speeding up. There's a little bit of a shakeup because the software engineer's job will be changing, but it doesn't look like they're going to need less software engineers because now we want to do more and more and more. The benefit here is we have a lot of old code that needs to be cleaned up when you think about some of our old government systems, like our tax systems, like your local property tax. You still get a paper check. That's partially because we like paper checks for important things. It's also because that coding is very old. There's a lot of companies that are stuck on old coding systems and they want to move it. And this is where the AI can really speed that up and actually make it cost effective. It does hours of work in seconds. I use, we have ChatGPT, a paid version of that, but there's several other models out there. And it makes hours of work in seconds. It helps me do my work. And this is good for educators. This is good for folks out in business, out in industry. It's just a little bit of a digital assistant that really speeds you up. And then idea generation. This is something that, when you sit down and you have a brainstorm with a couple other people and you come up with better ideas, you can use these models to do that. They don't know new ideas, but you say, you just kind of use it to brainstorm. Actually, I find it's pretty good at helping you do that. And what's coming next is more. That's all I can really say. Exactly where it goes is really tough to define. But there's one thing we're sure of, and it'll be more and more and more. More uses, more capabilities, more influence on our lives. So understanding it is paramount for students. So one of the debates I look at a lot is, what level of AI do we have now? It's pretty impressive. The large language models like Grok and ChatGPT, Anthropic, all these different companies coming out with these products. So I defined AI. I asked, this is me asking ChatGPT, define AI and let me know where we are. And of course, it gave me this lengthy thing. I said, shorten it for a slide. And this is what it gave me. Does the emojis and the symbols great. So narrow AI, this is what we've been working on for a while. So Siri, something that's image recognition, recommendation systems. It's task specific with limited intelligence is the definition, the short definition. Then we have general AI, human-like intelligence across domains. It says it's still theoretical, but it needs to be capable of reasoning and learning. So that's where my question marks are going to come in. But then we have super AI, beyond human intelligence. It's hypothetical, could innovate and self-improve. Now, I would argue that, now it says right at the bottom there, the current AI is narrow. General and super AI remain future goals. I don't really agree with them. So we have our definition of general AI at the bottom. And now if we think about, my 2 cents are, if we think about what AGI is, so it's human-like intelligence across domains. So right now, our AI models can do text, video, they can write, they can code, they can design, they can create videos based on a few words. They can interpret. When I take a picture of something, it knows what it is pretty well. It's passed the medical tests. It's passed the IQ tests. It's passed the bar, and then it can't pass the IQ test, but it gets a decent score on these things. So it's across domains, and it's very much human-like. It actually is smarter than any human I think I've met in its wealth of knowledge is. Now, that's partially because it's based on the internet, so the internet has lots of information. But it is, I think we have AGI. I just think it's not that good yet. We're imagining this super awesome AGI. It's just a little bit clunky. But in my 2 cents, it's not narrow anymore, right? We're building this multi-use thing that is going to drive our cars and write our emails and tell us what to buy at the grocery store and worry about our health. So it's a very interesting thing when we look at it this way. So my opinion is AGI is here. It's just not that good yet. But if you give it 5 to 10 years, we'll definitely be somewhere awesome. So now some folks, they get worried. This is all happening quick. It's a little bit scary. My opinion is we've done this before as a society. So if you go back 20 years or so, you have the internet. So about 25 years now, right? The internet is kind of coming out. Websites aren't built yet. Y2K problems, but the internet changed everything. You go back 10 to 15 years, smartphones changed everything, right? All of a sudden you have the app universe explode. So we've gone through this about every 10 years. And then in 2022, I believe, AI, large language models, ChatGPT comes out. So about every 10 years, we've dealt with a massive interruption. Now, education specifically has dealt with these over time. So the calculator changed math. Spell check changed grammar and spelling. I'm not a great speller, right? My 9-year-old is asked me questions while I'm driving about spelling. And I'm like, hold on, I got to write that down. I can't tell you. Because I had a computer since 5th grade, right? I was on a word processor in 5th grade. So I decided that the computer can spell for me. And then it changed, computers changed reading and writing. The internet changed just about everything we do, and AI is next. AI is changing what we do. Education has already been moving in this direction. This is where things like project-based learning come from, learning with application, not learning regurgitation. We knew this was coming. We just didn't know it would look like this. Now, some classrooms need to speed up. I know some of the English departments really got hit hard by AI because a lot of their assignments were something ChatGPT can do fairly quickly. And so the students now don't see the value there. It's hard to engage them when they don't see value. So a lot of classrooms had to really adapt what they're doing. But we've already known this for a while, that it was coming, and education has already been moving this direction. We might need to speed some of that up. Now, why this is important, why it's so important is we're cyborgs. There's no way around it. Now, it's not implanted in us like in Cyborg in the movies, but our phone is always on us. Our computers are always in front of us. We're always on screens. So in my opinion, we are cyborgs. And it's not stopping. Advanced manufacturing is going to keep coming and coming. Big data, which is now using that AI with all the data that we have about our society and ourselves. What do you do with that? Industry 4.0, it looks a bit different. Now it's all that smart autonomous actually flowing into the world of industry. And then AR and VR, like what does that really look like? Do we get to a place where we are doing not video calls, but VR calls, right? So you're not on a video, you're in a 3D space with someone. I could see that, right? I could see it coming. Now, why it's so important for students is they will be left behind without a solid tech understanding. They don't need to be an expert, but they have to be more than a user. They have to have an understanding of technology, how it works, how to make it work for you. how to use it. That is the big thing they need to grasp. So let's jump into the job info. So this is all from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. So this is the source for a lot of the articles written about jobs, right? This is the government, this government organization. This is what they do, is they collect this data and they track it. So this is 2023 data, which is, you know, the latest data they have. I bet they're coming out with 2024 pretty soon. And the average is, what I'm looking at is these percent changes from 2023 to 2033. So over the next 10 years, and we're 2 years into that. The average is 4%. So if you're right at 4%, you're average. You're sort of flat in the world. If you're below that, that's not good. And if you're above that, that's excellent. So you're going to have growth there. So in the green is good or growth. In the bad or in the red is bad or decline. So what we see on the left, you have industries. These are your major industry categories. Healthcare shooting up, right? And partially this is the generations. The larger generation is retiring. Healthcare is shooting up. Also, a lot of folks are not in a good, healthy state. So we're seeing healthcare shoot up. Professional business services, this is a lot of different folks fall under that, including if you think about like your Amazons with Amazon Web Service. This is also like your tax professionals, your accounting professionals. So there's a lot going on there where business is growing. Information, this is your data sciences. So very interesting, the companies working on information. And then utilities. Utilities are growing. You know, when you think about things like fiber and energy, we need a lot more of it to make things happen. And then on the right there in the green, you have by occupation. So these are the major categories. We're going to break these down a little bit in the next slide. But you have your major categories. So healthcare relates right across. Computer and mathematical, this is all your IT jobs and your data scientist jobs that are coming out of it. Again, more healthcare. And then more community and social services. So that's more of your therapists, your addiction specialists. So we have 1 that's very central to tech and 3 that are very central to healthcare. Now, on the bottom of the slide here, you have retail going away. We kind of know that, right? We all pretty much see that every day, with Amazon taking over from like your physical store. Mining, oil and gas was flat. Now, partially this is because you have robots coming in. So so the jobs related to that are going away. But then you also have a question of is the U.S. doing this work? So something like mining is not that common in the U.S. these days. Oil and gas, it depends what we're looking at, what sector we're looking at. But again, not as common in the U.S. these days. So now that can change in the future. We'll see where it goes. And then you have federal government staying flat. So, you know, that's their stat. And then you have agriculture not growing. So this is something that we kind of, I think, makes sense to me. And then on the right here, what's interesting is these do relate a little bit, but not quite the way we might think. So office and administrative support shooting down, -4%. Now, what that is from that's from AI, right? That's the primary reason. Sales and related occupations. So sales is shooting down because it's much easier to sell to people using automated tools. And then farming, fishing, forestry. So again, coming down in the sense that it may be robotics influencing it. Maybe we're not doing that in the US anymore. Production occupations. So this is like managers and overseers and assemblers. And that's declining because of automation and robotics. Now, breaking this down. So we have the same block up top, and then we have the major categories. Then we have the specific roles by occupation. So word processors and typists, you have some mining, data entry, telephone operators, answering services, data entry keyers. And so except for 2 of those, all of those are things the AI is very good at. So that's the reason those are going away, those specific roles. Now, we all saw this coming. Where it will impact is sort of your back office, your administrative roles. Those will just be wiped out by AI because it'll be so automated these days. Where are we seeing growth? So some of this is you have to understand where it's going. So again, your major categories up top, your specific roles that are having huge growth are on the bottom. Now we see wind, turbine, and solar. Now, the reason those are growing so much is because they didn't exist before. So the actual number of people doing that is not that big, but percent-wise, they're growing in a massive way. Then we see healthcare, nurse practitioners. We see data scientists, which again goes with those AI models. Information security analysis. Everyone knows why that one's shooting up. Cybersecurity is becoming a major problem. And then we have medical with physician assistants, medical service managers, and of course, computer and information research scientists. So again, AI. So what do we see here? We see new industries, wind and solar, with massive growth in specific roles. Then you see healthcare, right? There's doctor shortages, so we're supplementing that with PAs and nurse practitioners. And then you see AI, right? People working on AI and cybersecurity. So really interesting to see. Now, when we look at what our schools are preparing our kids for, these are the things that they see coming in the next 10 years. Now, there are one thing to mention, 26% growth is massive. There's a whole bunch of occupations like engineering, electricians, plumbers, all growing at 8 to 12%, that kind of thing. So don't think that it's because it's not on this list, it's not growing. But these are the ones that are growing in huge numbers. All right, so as I mentioned, the trades are growing at 8 to 12%. Engineering, all of engineering disciplines are growing at 10+%. So what we're seeing is we still need a lot of physical workers, and we need a lot of brain power workers, right? Engineers building things. Healthcare is booming, as we just talked about. Those are the three big takeaways. Now, I did look at where AI is impacting jobs. So on the left here in green, if you're on the, let's say, the zero line in the middle, if you're to the right of that, this is where AI is encouraging your jobs. So software developers, personal finance advisors, computer occupations in total, database architects, again, financial, electrical engineers, but not computer, and database administrators, right? All those are growing due to AI. On the red, on the right there, you see which ones are getting impacted by AI in a negative way. So this is appraisers, claim adjusters, investigators, because a lot of that will be automated on the back end. Credit analysis, because again, it'll be automated. Paralegals, legal assistants, again, that's that administrative role that's going away. So just interesting data points of where AI specifically is affecting jobs. All right, so a lot there. The next question I always get is, what do we do with this? Like, what do we need to do? So for teachers, we evolve our lessons, try to keep pace with industry, try to always be using what engages the students, and need to evolve your lessons year after year. Not rip them apart, but just evolve them slowly and surely. Integrate and embrace tech. There is no escaping it. You need to use it, and you need to teach students to use it. Something like a spreadsheet should not be taught. Here's how you use a spreadsheet. It should be integrated into what they're doing. Something like a website, building a website. You can teach them a little bit of website development, but then make the project about building that website about something else, right? So integrating tech as the medium, and then using that to drive interest from your students. Ask for PD and training for teachers. Raise your hand, ask for it, volunteer your time if you can. And there's lots of free and paid tools out there. The paid tools are usually better, that's why they're paid, but the free tools are decent as well in a lot of cases. Speak up and show interest. There's a massive shortage of teachers that want to teach tech subjects. So if you are interested in that, raise your hand, you'll get your pick of what you want to teach. All right, for districts, so, looking at that was at the teacher level. Now we're at the school or district level. Invest in your educators, build time to evolve lessons. So don't always slam their PD days with meetings and things like that. Give them time to evolve their lessons. Support educators in their learning. Find the funding, make it someone's focus. Having a grant person pays for itself, and learn from private sector practices. So private sector is good at certain things, not so good at certain things. Schools modeled after public sector are good at certain things, not good at certain things. Something that schools and education system can learn from private industry is continuous improvement. Change never stops. Always expect it, always improve. Longer term planning. Most planning in schools is 1 year, 2 years. We need to be planning 10 years out. Employee recruitment, employee learning is, at least at many companies, is a high priority of the leadership. Is I want to recruit great employees, and I want to keep them learning because that keeps them engaged and keeps them moving forward. Schools are not that good at that, so we want to improve those four things. Could really shift schools from being from struggling in certain ways to succeeding in certain ways. One mention of our approach, what we try to do is we invite tech. We love it. We base a lot of things on it, and we drive it into everywhere we can. Robots, drones, software, coding are the medium that we use to teach students to think. Now we're also teaching them skills in there, but we really want them to think and apply their knowledge. So on the right there, you have STEM knowledge. We're helping build that up, but then that white part is what we like to really dig into, which is applied skills. And then if we can get them some leadership and teamwork in that orange, they'll be successful at life. We like to integrate technologies. We don't only do 3D modeling in a course. We do 3D modeling and printing and coding. We try to mix them all together and connect it to the real world, frame it in the real world. It makes it much more interesting. A big piece is career-connected foundational skills, problem solving, critical thinking, public speaking. Those are something these young students lack. So we drive all of that into our programs, and the more, the better. That's something we're actually focusing on driving more of it into because we see these young folks struggling. And one big misconception, the second to last bullet there, is students are digital natives. They grew up with this stuff. They're not experts. They're good at using apps, right? My kids can fly through these apps and send, crazy things to their friends on text. But they don't know what a CPU is. They don't know what to do when it breaks. So they're not experts. I think a lot of folks confuse that their aptitude at using the device is very different than their aptitude at understanding it. So we need to teach them to be developers, not just consumers. And then one of the hardest things that we try to drive home is you have to learn with your students. None of us went to school for AI. If you're above the age, or if you're not in school right now, you didn't go to school for AI or drones or any of this. So we all are learning it as we go. And teach for understanding is the big lesson there. So you're teaching kids to understand, not to memorize, not to just have one skill, but we want to try and get them to understand what they're up to. One more mention of the big system. So zooming out a little bit for the K-12 system, we think they need to rely on industry a lot more and ed tech companies a lot more. I see a lot of districts building their own curriculum. I see a lot of districts, and that can work. I see a lot of districts trying to train themselves. That can work, but get industry involved, especially if budgets are tight. If you form partnerships, you supply good employees down the road, they will help you fund this stuff. There's a very real model for that. Paths for students into industry out of high school. So not just into college. That's something that is somewhat defined, the college path or the tech school path. But students that are just going right out into industry to get their first job or their first adult job needs to be better defined. It's not that well defined right now. A mistake I see is blindly throwing money at technology without really understanding how to sustain it, how to maintain it, how it's going to be used in the classroom. I see a lot of value wasted there. And then share best practices and plan for change, right? There will be change because industry is changing. And that's everything. I will take a look at the chat, see if there's any questions, but reach out anytime. My name is Dave. My email is dave@milestonec.com. And these are some of the websites where it talks about what we're up to and what we're doing, and hope to talk to you soon.